Welcome to another video on our Kanban guide series. Mish just perked up a little bit, so she's happy to be here. With us as always is Pratik Singh as well. In a previous video, we talked about the guide itself and why it exists. Now we kind of want to get into a little bit more of the meat of the guide and start off with specifically what is the definition of Kanban. So Pratik, what is the definition of Kanban?
Yeah, I'm going to quote the guide verbatim so that when you read it you don't get a different definition. That Kanban is a strategy for optimizing the flow of value through a process that uses a visual pull-based system. That sentence, literally the first sentence in the definition of Kanban on the guide, is the definition of Kanban. That's why they call it the definition of Kanban.
Go figure. So the idea is, if you have a job somewhere, if you're working somewhere, the reason that your job exists is to deliver value for your customer. Probably you have a customer somewhere, whether it's internal, whether it's external, whether it's a direct customer, whether it's indirect customer. Somewhere there is somebody who's either paying you to do your work or expecting you to do work or whatever. There's a customer. Our hope is, if you have those customers, that you want to deliver value for them. And if you buy that, then kind of the next step is, one of the best ways that we'll talk about in coming videos, one of the best ways to optimize the delivery of that value for your customers is to optimize something called flow. Now, if you believe all that, then the next step is for Kanban is, if you want to optimize for flow, that's all Kanban is a strategy to optimize for flow, which will ultimately optimize value delivery for your customers.
Yeah, and the way we optimize flow is essentially running a pull-based system, which we will again get into a little bit more later on why that is the optimum way of optimizing flow.
So we said it's a strategy. I'm guessing there's some practices that go along with this strategy. Pratik, can you talk to us about what those?
There are at least 3 practices, and again, we're not. If you watch the first video, you'll probably notice the things that are missing from this. These are practices, and they aren't complete in everyone's context. But if you're doing these 3 things, you're doing Kanban. First is designing your workflow, defining and visualizing it. Second is managing the work items that are going through your workflow, those items that deliver value. And the third is continuously looking for improvements to that workflow, improving that workflow over time. So if you're doing these 3 practices, you are doing Kanban.
That's it. Yeah, you do those 3 things. Don't let anybody tell you differently. You're doing Kanban. And if you do those 3 things, then you can call the thing that you are doing, whatever that thing is, you can call that a Kanban system. That is the very definition of a Kanban system. And that word system is very important, because we are going to be bringing things in like systems thinking, and those types of things in terms of our approach to Kanban. The final thing about the definition of Kanban that's admittedly very awkward is because we've tried to make the implementation of Kanban itself context agnostic, right? We don't know your context, and we don't pretend to know your context, nor would we ever be able to design a strategy or framework that works in every context. That's kind of silly. So I'm saying all of this because we don't know if you're operating in a team environment. We don't know if you're operating, say, at the portfolio level of an organization. We don't know if you're working with teams of teams. We don't know if you're working on a product. We don't know. Because we can't make any assumptions about the structure of the organization around which is using Kanban, there's kind of an awkward name for anybody who participates in a Kanban system. Can't call them team members, can't call them developers. In fact, I think it would be a very, very big mistake to call them developers. Can't use any of those words. So we use this, like I said, admittedly awkward terminology called Kanban system member. This is probably the only time you'll ever hear the word Kanban system member. But just know, if anybody who's participating in a Kanban system is a Kanban system member.
Anyone who helps this system deliver value is a Kanban system member, for all the reasons, for this awkward term being for all the reasons that Dan just mentioned.
And what's interesting, if anybody has any better ideas in terms of what we should call these things, we'd love to be all ears. The Kanban guide's a living, breathing document, and we don't pretend to have gotten it exactly right first time. So if anybody has any better ideas for what to call them, please let us know in the comments, and we'll take it back to the those authors, the Kanban guide authors, which we didn't mention, and we probably shouldn't. So, final word, Pratik, on the definition of Kanban.
Yeah, it's the basis of everything else that follows in the Kanban guide, the definition of Kanban. And yeah, as long as you're doing those 3 practices mentioned in the definition, you're doing Kanban.
So join us in the coming videos. We'll do a little bit deeper dive into each of those practices and talk about why each one is important and maybe what it might take to get started with some of those. So we look forward to seeing you in those videos. See you next time.
Yeah.